Vince Fontana, at least from private and also some public agencies, Mid-Pen and Peninsula Open Space.
My name is Joe Morris, and we lease both public and private ranches in the Central Coast.
The heart of my operations right here in California, right here in Contra, Costa County. We're scattered into Oregon, Nevada, Montana, Colorado, Nebraska, Wyoming. Feed a lot of cattle in the Midwest, but right here in the Central Valley, California is where most of our cattle winter. We winter some cattle in Nevada out on BLM in the desert. Go to corn stalks with the Wyoming cow herd. But we've got 30 employees, trucks of our own, but we run on private ground, Contra Costa Water District right here, and East Bay Regional Parks. Been dealing with the parks since probably the middle 80s. In my experience, grazing with the parks has been wonderful, and also with CCWD, but there's a lot of work that goes into the government leases that you don't have on private leases. As far as how I maintain the ranches, I maintain them all the same. I mean, good facilities, good fences, water and facilities is all important. If I don't have those, I can't graze as many cattle as I should. My job as a cattleman is produce as much quality beef as I can with the limited resources I have. Until people quit having babies, us ranchers and farmers have to figure out how to produce more food for the people in this world, not less.
It's always part of the conversation that we desire biodiversity. But right after we say that, we stop and bracket what that biodiversity can and cannot include. And so we often are focused on what we don't want to see, the diversity that we don't want to see. That's not included in biodiversity, the weeds. Yellow star thistle is among them. And that's a great opportunity for ranchers because there's real passion and real money behind weed abatement. Real money. I mean, it's amazing how much passion and money is spent on getting rid of weeds. So I recognized a long time ago that, and I tried, the cattle, they don't really like to eat yellow star thistle. You can get them to do it, but it's not profitable to do that. But there's another character out here, or that could be out here, namely the goat, gets fat on yellow star thistle. And I thought, wow, that'd be really good to be able to put weight on an animal, like Duane is talking about, and have that animal eat something that someone else doesn't want to see and is willing to pay for to get rid of. And so this year we had, you know, it was a great rain year, good growth year. Everything grew well, including yellow star thistle. And just to tell you how much passion there is about yellow star thistle, one of my neighbors looked at it across the fence and just was really anxious about it. Called me up and said, "This is unacceptable." I thought we were really friends. "This is unacceptable. We have an issue. We got to get rid of this thing. You need to hire a boom sprayer and a helicopter and get out there and get with it." Passion and money is willing to be spent on these kinds of things. And I said, well, you know, the landowner of the state parks and I, we've got a plan. And we think we know what the cause of this is. And the cause has to do with soil biology and litter. And we can reduce the seed, and we're going to reduce the seed by introducing goats. And so at a profit. We have to do this at a profit because that's the way we roll. And so we did. And we've had goats out there, and we worked really hard, and we set a price that we thought was the value to the state park. And they actually came back to us and say, you know, what you're doing is more valuable than we thought. And I was like, great, these weeds really bug these people. And they've got a neighbor who's telling them that it really bugs him too. So anyway, there's an opportunity out there. It may not be with the cow, but it is with the grazing, or it is with the animal impact.
What do you need from your public leases, maybe in their structure, to continue to be viable?
The willingness to understand the cattle industry and the different cycles and the things that go into what we do. You know, I've had some things dropped on me at the last minute at different times, and I says, wait a second, I've already got my plans laid out for the next 6 months.
As the landlord, you have to decide what you want with your place. Maintenance, improvements, or you want financial gain. There's a lot of guys that I know lease property for financial gain, and they're there for 2-3 years, and their place is graded off and mowed down to the ground, and fences are falling apart, and they move on. That's what the landlord wanted because he bought it as an investment property, and it'll sell whether there's a fence on it or not. So I think it's very important for the rancher and the owner to have a good communication. And the thing is, the owner has to will to accept the fact that a rancher cannot maintain his property, put white fences up, picket fences, and pave roads, and also try to make a living. This can't be done.
We need to think a little bit differently. We need to work together to formulate what our desired outcomes are and articulate them, because they may be common, they may not be common. We may not know how to have that conversation, but it can be had. Some of the problems with having that conversation are rules that are written down and assumed to be correct, and they're written by people who have no relationship, or at least no intimate relationship with the lands that are being managed according to those rules. And those are real problems. Those are producing worst outcomes because they're always written by lawyers or real estate agents that have that in mind. Gosh, we're going to be sued if we have this kind of plant, or we're going to be sued if we have water go in this direction or that. And so if our conversation is about an articulated desired outcome, I think that there's lots of good things that can be done.
But yes, a balance of private and park is very important. I could not imagine my life running purely on public grounds.
Usually, private land is not encumbered by so many rules as public land.
So you're speaking of right now there is a habitat conservation plan in eastern Contra Costa County, and they're acquiring for mitigation purposes quite a bit of rangeland. A lot of it is going into public ownership, and the idea is to make parks more connected, with water district lands. And so the question is, in that matrix, how do we leave connections for ranching to be viable?
Most often those decisions are not made in conversation with ranchers or even with the latest understanding of how animals and plants and microbes and soils and people get along.
Life is always changing. My industry is always changing. The volatility in our markets is probably as big a problem for me to try to manage in this day and age as the fact that private ground is being bought up by the public. It just changes the way I have to manage things, and I just wanted everybody to be aware that as green as everybody is thinking in this day and age, heck, we had everybody talks about being green. Well, as things change, have been changing, we are being less green in this industry. Some of it by private ground being taken into public hands, no longer allowing year-round grazing of cattle. Other things, other issues are by private ground being bought up by other industries in agriculture that are more profitable than the cattle industry. I've got to be one of the only fools in the country that's taken productive farm ground in Woodland, California, and put it into irrigated pasture. Why did I do that? For one reason, because I needed summer feed with a longer growing season. I had to have the flexibility to move off of public or private leases that are affected by droughts. Conservation easement in the right situation, I don't have a problem if a ranching family wants to do that and wants to keep their ranch grazing land in perpetuity, but like Joe says, that is a long time. We don't even know if in 100 years from now, if the cattle industry will even be here. my father's got a ranch next door to where he lives that the NRCS has come in and they are buying a conservation easement on this ranch for $12 million. Well, if a private agricultural guy came in and bought it, he might be able to give 8, 9, maybe 10 million. It's got grapes, it's got almonds, it's got walnuts on it. For 12 million US tax dollars, they're going to tear out all the almonds, tear out all the walnuts, tear out all the irrigated pasture, tear out all the grapes. They're going to tear down the levees so that the bottom ground will flood naturally. They're going to build wetlands. They're going to put in oak trees. More tax dollars are going to be spent to put this in. Our government's broke already. Then on top of that, the 7 or 8 full-time employees that were on that ranch will be down to 1, because what will be left will be 5,000 acres of grazing ground. You'll run 500 cows for the winter. You'll put those cows on a truck and send them to Oregon or Nevada for the summer. We're going to burn diesel. You're going to have 2 government agencies or 2 government employees managing that ranch forever, overseeing the wetlands, overseeing the oak groves. What kind of productivity are we doing here? We're taking it away. There will be less income tax, less payroll taxes, less jobs for people. How is that a positive thing? Everybody here's got a family. You all have grandbabies. You all want them to be fed. That ranch is going to go from being terribly productive to just terribly unproductive.
Conservation easements are another tool, and they imply goals. Well, what are the goals, and who is sitting down at the table to have that conversation? You know, and Duane mentioned, and maybe I mentioned, I should have, that ranchers get into these things because they need the money. And the bottom line, I think, that we should recognize, and I recently put in a proposal in response to a request for proposals on a public ranch, and it became utterly clear to me that ranchers get paid for managing animals. That's a no-brainer. But the assumption is that ranchers get paid for managing land. That's not true. I suggested in this proposal that they were willing to pay ranchers for installing infrastructure. And by infrastructure, everybody knows what I mean, right? Fences, water, trails. And I suggested that the outrageous thing, that we be paid for installing and improving and enhancing biological infrastructure. Their natural resource management plan proposes to do that. It's not doing it. But it was written by a group of very well-respected people, lots of brain power behind it, but it's clearly not producing what it has intended to produce. And I suggested that I could produce what they wanted to produce, but I needed to do that at a profit, and they were absolutely unwilling to pay me for managing land. They assumed that I'd be paid for managing cattle. So when we talk about all these things and all the different tools that are out there at our disposal, from easements to grazing to building water, or to you know, whatever the tools are out there, technology, all the technology, we have to remember that the most important technologies that we have are not coming from Silicon Valley. They are the tools of grazing, animal impact, and rest.